I must say it is quite a privilege and an honor to be working with Dwight and the folks at the NFL to help them in this culture change. It's a huge undertaking, and you're right, we're not done, but the strides we've made have just been incredible. And you mentioned back in 2012, there were incidences of suicide that really brought the NFL and many of us to our knees. We had to do something. And the NFL turned to the federal government and said, we've got to do something. We want to establish a safety net for our NFL family so this kind of thing does not happen again. We want to have an independent, confidential service that people are going to feel safe going to, so we can help them be safe and also get access to these programs that we're creating. So the federal government pointed the NFL over to us. We're Linked Health Solutions. We've been administering the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline since 2004. And we have the privilege of working with some of the top experts in the country and the world on best practices in suicide prevention. So we said, we can do this for you. And we assembled a team and launched the NFL Lifeline service back in 2012 in July. And this is the mission of what we're trying to accomplish here. And when I talk about the NFL family, it's not just for current players or former players, but it's also for coaches, management, staff, and their families. So it's a universe of about 25,000, 30,000 people that we're focusing on. Next slide. So a brief overview of the kinds of things that we're doing with our partners for the NFL to give you a sense of what they're committed to in terms of providing not only their current workforce, but people who will always be a member of their family. That is providing this 24/7 hotline with trained counselors. There's actually two crisis centers in the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Network that are part of this hotline group. And in addition to that, we provide follow-up care. And Bob Turner was talking about how important follow-up is. And in fact, we've seen plenty of research that has noted that when you phone people back and ask them how they're doing and checking on them, something that simple can make a difference in saving lives. And we've seen research time and again that has proven that that caring act can reduce suicides. And that's something that we're also doing with the callers to the Lifeline. We also provide services online, such as a chat service, but I really like the self-check tool, which is pretty cool. The self-check tool is really designed to help people identify and articulate what's going on with them, their thoughts, their behaviors, their moods that are troubling them, because it's hard to articulate some of that, especially for many of us guys. So if we can take this quiz and we can print it out and we can hand it to a doctor, then we can say, here's what I'm going through, and then we can have a conversation about it. We use it to bridge a conversation to our online chat service, so we also provide this confidential chat service. And I'll show you the website in just a minute. But as Dwight mentioned, we provide consultation. We do some training for the folks, the league staff and the clubs and the transition coaches, the former players that are acting as mentors and supports for some of the players who are in crisis. And we also provide critical incident response. As noted by Dwight, there have been some instances, and when these incidences happen, our team provides a 24/7 response, not just by phone, but also we'll send folks to that facility, that team, and provide them with support. We also provide consultation around crisis management planning and do a lot of outreach and education. So these are the kinds of things, next slide, that we do, and these are the folks who are doing it. These are in fact, some of David Litt's with the Education Development Center is one of our partners. But really what the idea is not just to provide a hotline, but also provide a communications mechanism so we can support the NFL's efforts to get the word out to the NFL family about this important service. And the important service is an array of programs that is provided by the NFL. But nevertheless, it's an independent and confidential service. So we don't tell the NFL who's calling. But if a person says we need explicit help from the NFL, then we will give the information with their consent to the NFL, and they'll do concerted outreach, and we'll send out transition coaches to assist them. But I go to the next slide. I want to note an important comparison here. We were talking, Dwight was just talking about males and the male culture, and how the common themes relative to not only what we're doing with the NFL, but what we've been doing with the Veterans Crisis Line with all of those same partners that you just saw are all very much involved in our work with the Veterans Crisis Line as well. And you'll see some very common themes that are true of working with men in male professions primarily. And what you see basically are things like this notion of you can't get help. You got to do this by yourself. And so it's important that we provide some kind of mentoring. We provide some kind of modeling for how to get help. And specifically, I'll talk about a little bit more about that shortly, but another thing we do with the Veterans Crisis Line that we also do here is there's this notion that Dwight was talking about in terms of this being an experience, not a career. When you talk with veterans, this experience was meaningful and basically created an identity for many of them. And the transition back to their culture, back to their civilization, back to our communities, back into their families, is a hard one. And for many of them, the modeling for that from their peers and the support from their peers is absolutely critical. And Eduardo was talking earlier about how peer support is critical, and we've heard from the fire department, we've heard from the police department, that we need to have other males saying, "You're still awesome." In fact, I heard that one veteran talk about what his commander told him upon his discharge. He said, "You know what PTSD really is? PTSD is that you're never going to be as awesome as you are now." And it's probably more descriptive of depression, but this notion that this is the pinnacle of it, and now this is the end of it. This is the end of meaning for me. And Tim talked about how important that was, and Dwight talked about how important that was, that this is who I am, and this is what makes life meaningful for me. So what we have to do in the workplace is not only remind people of what makes their work meaningful, but also provide connectedness and support, as Eduardo was talking about. And that we can do through peers. Joel was also talking about we can also do that through leadership. But certainly through peers is something that we need to be very aware of, how we can employ perhaps people that have already left the force, people who have already left the NFL, because providing that peer support not only helps the people who are in trouble, but also helps the people who are providing that peer support. And there's all sorts of evidence of that. So former players helping current players helps former players too. And so this is, and same thing with the VA is doing this. They have mentoring programs, and the veterans are helping each other. That peer support is absolutely critical. So we need to continue to look at ways that we do that. Next slide. So on our website, we try to create some of these models and show some models of NFL players saying it's important and necessary to get help when you need it. And there's also a lot of other educational materials on there, things that can be downloaded by players and family members, information about some of the programs. But I want to play you this video because this is, I think, kind of says it all. This is Michael Irvin. He's an ex-Dallas Cowboy player and is now a broadcast journalist for NFL programs.
To my brothers, and that's what you are. You are my brothers because we are family. We are part of an NFL family. And as family, we do have to look out for one another, the way we did on the football field. We relied on one another. We trusted one another. We gave our all to one another. We have to do that off the football field. We have to trust one another. We have to rely on one another. We have to share with one another. We can't isolate. It's the worst thing in the world for a man to do. The Bible says, confess thy faults one to another, pray ye one for the other, and in this we shall find healing. What it means by that is, when we talk, we find out that we all go through some of the same issues. And you may be able to talk to someone that has been in the issue that you're in and has come out of it, and he can tell you how to come out of it. But we don't talk. We shut up and we be quiet and we don't say a word and we implode. We put ourselves in isolation, and that's the worst thing you can do. When you think about it, it's how they punish the most hardened criminals in the world. They don't beat them. They don't whoop them. They lock them away and isolation. They cut off their ability to communicate with others, and it runs them crazy. They have reason to be locked away. We do not. Let's make sure that we're not locking ourselves away. Let's lean on one another. That's what family is for. Lean on me, man. And if I need help, I'm going to lean on you. We do it all the time on the field. Let's learn, for our life's sake, how to do it off the field. Lean on me.
NFL Lifeline. Make the call.